Mr. Turner, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, with the gentleman yield for some
Does
questions.
the gentleman yield for questions?
I yield for questions.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Dr. Oliverson. So I want to follow up on the dialogue you just had with our colleagues. With respect to the $70 million that you're moving out of the Medicaid program, you said it's not going to affect services for children, if I heard you correctly. Is that right?
For Medicaid beneficiaries.
For Medicaid beneficiaries, so children and adults.
For those that are currently on the Medicaid program.
Okay, so the Medicaid program in the state, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Medicaid program in the state of Texas provides health care services to children. In fact, 3 out of 8 children in Texas receive Medicaid, and 1 out of 12 Texas adults receive Medicaid. That's essentially what Medicaid does in the state of Texas. Is that fair to say?
I will accept those numbers, sure.
Okay, so if we take $70 million from a program that does 2 things, serves 1 out of 12 Texas adults and 3 out of 8 Texas children, how are we not reducing services if we're cutting $70 million from those 2 services?
Well, respectfully, Representative, because of the mechanism that we use to pay for Medicaid, those services that are covered will pay those services. And as you know, this is part of our appropriations process, is that the Medicaid program is trued up at the end of every biennium. And so that's the mechanism by which we keep our promises.
So you mentioned the true up, and you alluded to the supplemental appropriations bill we're going to hear later tonight. So the supplemental appropriations bill always, since I've been here anyway, always covers a Medicaid shortfall, correct?
I apologize. I couldn't hear the last part of your question.
The supplemental appropriations bill, most times we take it up, usually covers a Medicaid shortfall for the current biennium. Is that true?
That is not uncommon.
Right. Okay.
So
when you suggest that this is going to be resolved through the normal appropriations process, I think what you're really saying is that you are going to cause a $70 million shortfall for the next biennium, and the legislature is going to have to come back in 2 years and pass the supplemental appropriations bill to cover a deficit in Medicaid that is going to be caused by this amendment. Is that right?
I don't think you can predict that in the future, which is why we,
okay.
right?
But Dr. Oliverson, you just said you're taking $70 million from Medicaid. We've established Medicaid does 2 things. It provides health care for a lot of kids and some adults. So we're taking $70 million from those services. You said we're not going to cut any services, and it's going to be resolved through the normal appropriations process, which you then alluded to the true-up, which is the supplemental appropriations bill. So my question is essentially what you're doing causing a $70 million deficit in the Medicaid program in the next biennium that the next legislature will have to come back and fix through a supplemental appropriations bill when we have no idea what the revenue estimate's going to be 2 years from now? We don't know if we're going to be in a recession. We don't know if we're going to have a budget shortfall. And we're creating a $70 million hole 2 years in advance. That's what we're doing with this amendment, is it not?
That's not my understanding, no.
Well, I think, respectfully, Dr. Oliverson, I think in so many words, you said that's essentially what we're going to do. We're going to fix the $70 million shortfall through the normal appropriations process, and you talked about the true-up, which is a supplemental appropriations bill. The only way to do that, to my knowledge, is to do it through a supplemental appropriations bill in 2027, and I don't think we ought to obligate the future legislature on purpose to having to cover a $70 million deficit in Medicaid, because these are services that provide health care, as I said, to 3 out of 8 Texas children, 1 out of 12 Texas adults, and we need to honor our commitment there. But let me ask you one other thing. Are you aware that Texas, in the post-pandemic era, was the most aggressive state in the country in terms of the Medicaid unwinding, that millions of people lost their Medicaid coverage in very short order, and we have found in that time period that a lot of people who are qualified for Medicaid were actually cut from the program, though they should not have been. Are you aware of that?
I am not aware of that.
You're not aware of that?
No.
You're not aware of are you aware of the Medicaid unwinding process?
I am aware of that process.
Okay. Are you aware that?
I'm not aware that that process has proceeded in a way that is. Sorry.
The gentleman's time has expired.